My name is Sarah Mitchell. I am 31 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood outside of Portland, Oregon. Every morning for the past 4 months, my husband made me a smoothie. He would wake up before me, go downstairs, and blend together spinach, banana, blueberries, and protein powder. He would bring it to me in bed with a kiss on my forehead. "Drink up, babe," he would say. "It's good for you." I drank every single one, and every single one was making me sicker. But I didn't know that yet. Not until the morning I found the small brown bottle hidden behind the cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink. Not until I read the label and my hands started shaking so hard I had to sit down on the cold tile floor. Not until I realized that the man sleeping upstairs, the man I had loved for 8 years, was slowly, carefully, patiently poisoning me to death. My name is Sarah, and this is how I destroyed him before he could destroy me. But before I tell you everything, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand who I was before you can understand what I became. I met David at a friend's barbecue in the summer. I was 23. He was 26. I almost didn't go that day. I had worked a double shift at the hospital. I was a nurse at a pediatric clinic, and I was exhausted. My friend Clara practically dragged me out the door. "You need to meet people," she said. "You can't just work and sleep." So I went. I stood in the corner of the backyard holding a paper plate with a burger I didn't want, wishing I was home in my pajamas. That's when he walked over. He was tall, with sandy brown hair and green eyes. He had a calm energy about him. He didn't come at me with a pickup line or a loud introduction. He just stood next to me and said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." I laughed. It came out of nowhere. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who feels the same way," he said. He smiled. It was a warm smile. It reached his eyes. We talked for 2 hours. He was an accountant. He told me numbers made sense to him in a way people didn't. He said it like it was a confession, like he was admitting a flaw. I found it honest. I found it endearing. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. He texted me that night. Just one line. "I'm glad you didn't stay home." We were married 2 years later. The wedding was small. We held it in Clara's backyard, the same place we met. David cried during his vows. He held my hands and his voice cracked when he said, "I will protect you for as long as I live." Everyone said we were perfect together. And for a while, we were. We bought a house, a small craftsman with a big yard and a porch swing. I planted rose bushes along the fence. David built raised garden beds for vegetables on the weekends. We had routines. Wednesday was taco night. Saturday morning was the farmer's market. Sunday evening was a movie on the couch with the dog, a beagle named Otis, curled between us. Life was ordinary. Life was safe. I trusted him with everything. I trusted him with our finances. He was an accountant, after all. I trusted him with my fears. I told him about my childhood, about my father who drank, and my mother who stayed too long. I told him I was terrified of being trapped in a bad situation and not seeing it until it was too late. He held me close. "That will never happen to you," he whispered. "I won't let it." He used my deepest fear as a blueprint. The changes started about a year ago, but they were so gradual I barely noticed. It was like watching the hour hand on a clock. You never see it move, but suddenly it's in a different place. It started with distance. David used to come home and talk to me. He would sit at the kitchen counter while I cooked and tell me about his day. The annoying client, the broken coffee machine, small things. Then the talking stopped. He would come home, say hello, and disappear into his office. "Busy season," he said. Busy season lasted 9 months. Then his phone became a secret. He used to leave it everywhere. On the couch, on the bathroom counter, in the car. Now it was always in his pocket. Always face down, always locked. "Company policy?" he said when I asked about the new passcode. Then came the gym. David had never cared about exercise. Now he was going 5 days a week. He lost 20 pounds. He bought new clothes, fitted shirts, expensive jeans. He started trimming his beard differently, shorter and more precise. One night, he came home from the gym smelling like perfume. Not cologne. Perfume. Sweet, floral, feminine. It clung to his shirt collar. "They use scented towels at the new gym," he said without me even asking. He had the excuse ready. That told me everything. I didn't confront him. I want you to understand why. I grew up watching my mother confront my father about his drinking. She would scream. He would deny. She would cry. He would leave. Nothing ever changed except my mother got more broken each time. I learned that confrontation without evidence is just noise. So I became quiet. I became careful. I watched. The confirmation came on a Tuesday evening. David was in the shower. His laptop was open on the kitchen table. He had been working on taxes, or so he said. The screen was still unlocked. I didn't plan to look, but an email notification popped up in the corner of the screen. The preview showed 3 words that stopped my heart. Miss you already. The sender's name was Megan Torres. I stood there for 5 seconds. The shower was still running. I could hear him humming. I opened the email. It was part of a thread. I scrolled. I read fast, my eyes scanning the words like I was reading a chart at the hospital. Quick. Clinical. Efficient. Megan was a junior analyst at his firm. She was 24. The thread went back 3 months. I read about hotel rooms. I read about lunch breaks that weren't about lunch. I read about plans. The worst email was from David, sent 2 weeks ago. She doesn't suspect anything. She's too trusting. It's almost sad. But it makes everything easier. Once I figure out the money situation, we're free. The money situation. My stomach dropped. I closed the laptop. I wiped my fingerprint off the trackpad with my sleeve. I walked to the sink and gripped the edge of the counter. I breathed in through my nose and out through my mouth the way I taught anxious parents at the clinic. The shower turned off. I heard the glass door slide open. I picked up a dish towel and started drying a plate that was already dry. David walked into the kitchen with a towel around his waist. Hey, he said. What's for dinner? Tacos, I said. My voice didn't shake. It was a miracle. It's Wednesday. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to him in the dark, listening to him breathe, and I made a decision. I would not be my mother. I would not scream. I would not cry. I would not give him the chance to deny, to gaslight, to rearrange reality. I would gather everything I needed, and when the time came, I would act. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. I checked the credit card statements. I found hotel charges, restaurant charges, jewelry purchases. He had bought her a necklace for $400. He had never spent that much on me. I checked the car's GPS history through the app on my phone. We shared the account. He had forgotten about that. The GPS showed his car parked at an apartment complex on the east side of town on 12 separate occasions. That was Megan's place. I took screenshots of everything. I emailed them to a new address I created specifically for this purpose. I printed copies and hid them in a folder inside a box of old nursing textbooks in the garage. David would never open a nursing textbook. Then I found something that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning. David had gone to the gym. Otis needed his heartworm medication, and I remembered I had stored the extra pills in the cabinet under the kitchen sink, behind the cleaning supplies. I knelt down and reached behind the bottles of bleach and dish soap. My hand touched something unfamiliar. It was a small brown glass bottle with a dropper cap. There was no pharmacy label. Instead, there was a handwritten sticker. 2 words, thallium sulfate. I pulled the bottle out. I stared at it. My nursing training kicked in before my emotions did. Thallium sulfate, heavy metal compound, historically used as rat poison. Odorless, tasteless, causes gradual hair loss, numbness in extremities, gastrointestinal distress, organ failure, fatal in accumulated doses. Symptoms mimic dozens of common illnesses, nearly undetectable without specific testing. My hands went cold. I almost dropped the bottle. I set it down carefully on the counter and sat on the kitchen floor. I pressed my back against the cabinet. I pulled my knees to my chest. I thought about the smoothies. Every morning for 4 months. Drink up, babe. It's good for you. I thought about my symptoms. The nausea I had blamed on stress. The tingling in my fingers that I thought was carpal tunnel from work. The hair I found on my pillow each morning. More and more of it. The fatigue that made me feel like I was wading through mud. I had gone to my doctor twice. The first time, she said it was probably burnout. The second time, she ran basic blood work. Everything came back normal, because standard blood panels don't test for thallium. He was killing me in tiny increments. He was doing it every morning with a smile and a kiss. He was doing it with blueberries and spinach. He was making my murder taste like a health drink. I sat on that kitchen floor for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I was beyond crying. Something inside me shifted. It was like a switch flipping. The woman who sat down on that floor was a wife. The woman who stood up was something else entirely. I put the bottle back exactly where I found it. I memorized its position. Dropper cap facing left. Label facing the wall. Behind the bleach. In front of the dish soap. I took a photo first, with a ruler next to it for scale. I emailed the photo to my secure address. Then I drove to a lab in the next city, 40 minutes away. I told them I was a nurse conducting a personal health screening. I requested a heavy metals panel. I paid cash. 3 days later, the results came back. Thallium levels in my blood were 6 times the normal range. Not yet lethal, but climbing. He was being patient. He was dosing me slowly so it would look like a mysterious illness. A young woman, otherwise healthy, gradually deteriorating. By the time anyone thought to test for poison, I would already be in the ground. I sat in my car in the lab parking lot and stared at those numbers. 6 times normal. I thought about what would happen if I did nothing. In 2 months, maybe 3, my organs would start to fail. My hair would be gone. My nervous system would be shot. David would play the devastated husband. He would cry at my funeral the way he cried at our wedding. Then he would collect the life insurance. We had a policy worth $1.5 million. He would sell the house. He would move in with Megan. He would build a new life on the grave of the woman who planted roses for him. No. I closed my eyes. I said it out loud in the empty car. No. I went to a lawyer the next day. Her name was Patricia Vance. She was in her 60s, small, with silver hair and glasses that made her look like a librarian. But her eyes were sharp. I sat in her office and told her everything. The affair, the emails, the poison, the lab results. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took off her glasses and cleaned them with her shirt. A slow, deliberate gesture. "We need to go to the police," she said. "Not yet," I said. "He'll know. If the police show up and he's not arrested immediately, he'll destroy the evidence. He'll flush the bottle. He'll wipe his search history. And it becomes my word against his. Then what do you want to do?" "I want to catch him on camera," I said. "I want footage of him putting that poison in my drink. I want something so undeniable that no lawyer on earth can get him out of it." She studied me for a long moment. "That's dangerous, Sarah. I'm already being poisoned every morning," I said. "The danger is the same whether I act or not. At least this way, I'm in control." She nodded slowly. "Then, let's build your case." Over the next 3 weeks, I built my trap. I stopped drinking the smoothies. Every morning, David would bring one to me in bed. I would smile. I would take a sip in front of him, just enough to wet my lips. Then, when he went to shower, I would pour it into a thermos I kept hidden in my nightstand drawer. I sealed each one with the date written on tape. I stored them in a mini cooler in the trunk of my car. 14 smoothies. 14 doses of poison. Each one was evidence. My symptoms started improving almost immediately. The tingling in my fingers faded. My energy came back. My hair stopped falling out. David noticed. "You look better," he said one evening. "The new vitamins must be working." He had told me weeks ago to start taking a specific supplement. I now realized it was probably something to mask or accelerate the thallium. I had been flushing those pills down the toilet since the day I found the bottle. "I think you're right," I said. "I feel so much better." I smiled at him. He smiled back. 2 predators at a dinner table, each thinking they were the hunter. I bought a nanny camera. It was disguised as a phone charger. I placed it on the kitchen counter, angled toward the blender. It had a motion sensor and recorded to a cloud account that David didn't know existed. The first morning, I watched the footage on my phone from the hospital parking lot. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. The video was clear. At 6:47 a.m., David walked into the kitchen. He opened the cabinet under the sink. He reached behind the cleaning supplies. He pulled out the brown bottle. He unscrewed the dropper cap. He squeezed 3 drops into the blender. He put the bottle back. He blended the smoothie. He poured it into a glass. He carried it upstairs. He was humming, the same tune he always hummed. I watched it 3 times. I saved it to 3 separate cloud accounts and the USB drive in my nursing textbook box. I emailed it to Patricia. Then I put my phone down, stared at the steering wheel and let myself feel it, just for 1 minute. The grief, the rage, the heartbreak of watching the man I loved casually drop poison into my breakfast while humming a song. 1 minute. That was all I allowed myself. Then I wiped my eyes, started the car, and drove to work. I had patients to see, and I had a husband to bury. Not in the ground, in a courtroom. I recorded 7 more mornings, 7 more videos of David poisoning my smoothie. Each one identical. Reach, unscrew, squeeze, stir, blend, hum. It was routine for him. It was as casual as brushing his teeth. Patricia said we had more than enough. She contacted a detective she trusted. His name was Ramirez. He was quiet and serious. He reviewed the evidence in Patricia's office while I sat across the table. The lab results, the videos, the emails, the saved smoothies, the financial records showing the life insurance policy, the affair, the hidden expenses. He watched the first video without blinking. He watched the second one. By the third, his jaw was tight. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. "At least 4 months of the smoothies," I said. "Probably longer with other methods I didn't catch." "And you've been living with him this entire time? Sleeping next to him?" "Yes." He looked at me with something I couldn't quite read. Respect, maybe, or disbelief. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, "we're going to arrest your husband, but I need you to do one more thing. I need you to go home tonight and act completely normal." "Can you do that?" "Detective," I said. "I've been doing that for weeks." That evening, I drove home. I walked through the front door. Otis ran up to me, tail wagging. I knelt down and buried my face in his fur. He was the only honest creature in this house. David was in the kitchen making dinner. He turned around when he heard me. "Hey, babe. How was work?" "Long," I said. "I'm tired. Sit down, I'm making chicken." "Sounds great." I sat at the table. I petted Otis. I watched David cook. I watched his hands. Those hands that used to hold mine. Those hands that squeezed poison into my food every single morning. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a vast, empty calm. Like the surface of a lake before a storm. We ate dinner. We watched television. He fell asleep on the couch with his arm around me. I didn't move. I sat there in the dark, listening to him snore, counting the hours. At 6 the next morning, the doorbell rang. David was still asleep. I was already dressed. I had been awake all night. I walked to the front door. I opened it. Detective Ramirez stood on the porch with 4 officers behind him. "Good morning, Mrs. Mitchell," he said quietly. I stepped aside. I pointed toward the bedroom, down the hall. Last door on the left. They moved through the house like shadows. I heard their boots on the hardwood floor. I heard the bedroom door open. I heard David's confused voice, groggy with sleep. "What the hell? What is this?" "David Mitchell, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Sarah Mitchell. You have the right to remain silent." I heard the handcuffs click. I stood in the hallway. David appeared between 2 officers, hands cuffed behind his back. He was in his boxer shorts and a t-shirt. His hair was messy. He looked small and confused and pathetic. He saw me standing there. He saw that I was fully dressed. He saw that I was calm, and I watched it happen. I watched the realization move across his face like a wave. His eyes widened. His mouth opened. He understood. "Sarah," he said. His voice cracked. "Sarah, wait. This is a mistake. I can explain." I looked at him. I looked right into those green eyes that I used to love. "No, David," I said. "You can't." They let him out the front door. The neighbors were watching from their porches. Mrs. Chen across the street had her hand over her mouth. David kept his head down. He didn't fight. He didn't resist. Because David was never brave. He was the kind of man who used poison instead of facing a fight. He was the kind of man who killed slowly so he wouldn't have to see the blood. The squad car pulled away. I stood on the porch and watched it disappear around the corner. Otis pressed against my leg. I reached down and scratched his ears. "It's just us now, buddy," I said. The trial lasted 2 weeks. David pleaded not guilty. His lawyer tried to argue that the thallium was for pest control. Patricia dismantled that defense in 15 minutes. She showed the jury the videos. All 7 of them. She showed the lab results. She showed the emails to Megan. She showed the life insurance policy. She showed the timeline. A healthy woman, a cheating husband, a secret poison. $1.5 million motive, Megan testified. She cried on the stand. She said she didn't know about the poison. She said David told her he was getting a divorce. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. I didn't care about her. She was irrelevant. David was sentenced to 30 years. Attempted murder in the first degree. Conspiracy. Fraud. The judge called it calculated, cold-blooded, and cowardly. I sat in the courtroom and watched them lead him away. He looked back at me once. His eyes were wet. I felt nothing. I kept the house. Some people said I should sell it. They said it was contaminated. They said the memories would eat me alive. But I didn't see it that way. This was my house. I picked out the floors. I painted the walls. I planted the roses. He was the infection, and he had been removed. I repainted the kitchen. I chose a warm terracotta color, something bold and alive. I threw out the blender. I bought a new one, a bright red one that looked nothing like the old one. I ripped out the cabinet under the sink and replaced it entirely. I didn't want to look at the space where the bottle had been. I went back to the lab and got tested every month until my thallium levels returned to normal. It took 5 months. 5 months for the poison to leave my blood. The emotional poison took longer. I started therapy. I started running. I adopted a second dog, a mutt named Pepper who had been abandoned at a shelter. She was scared of everything at first. She flinched when I reached for her. She hid under the bed during thunderstorms. Slowly, she learned to trust me. I understood her completely. One evening, about a year after the arrest, I was sitting on the back porch. It was sunset. The sky was pink and orange. The roses along the fence were in full bloom. Otis was chasing a ball in the yard. Pepper was asleep at my feet. I was drinking tea. Just tea. No smoothie. I thought about the woman I used to be. The woman who stood in the corner of a barbecue holding a plate she didn't want. The woman who trusted too easily. The woman who drank every smoothie with a smile. She was gone. I wasn't sad about that. She had to go so I could arrive. People ask me if I hate him. I tell them I don't have the energy for that. Hate is heavy. Hate is a full-time job. I spent 8 years carrying the weight of his lies. I'm done carrying things for him. I don't hate David. I just don't think about him anymore. He sits in a cell. I sit on my porch. He counts the days. I count the roses. He thought he was the smartest person in the room. He forgot that I was a nurse. He forgot that I understood chemistry. He forgot that I understood symptoms. He forgot that I was the one who paid attention to the details while he was busy being clever. He gave me poison every morning for 4 months. I gave him 30 years. I took a sip of my tea. I looked at the sunset. Otis dropped the ball at my feet and wagged his tail. I threw it again. The evening was warm. The air smelled like roses. I was alive. I was healthy. I was free. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. He never knew who he was dealing with.